She vanished without a trace. For over a year, there were no leads, no suspects, nothing. But then, something strange happened in the forest. A wild bird scratched the ground, and what it uncovered would reopen the case and expose a dark truth no one expected. This is a story of silence, obsession, and the one moment that changed everything. Before we dive into the full story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy chilling true crime stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe. Now, let's go back to the day she disappeared. Detective James Donovan stared at the photograph on his desk. A young woman with chestnut hair and a bright smile looked back at him, unaware that her image would soon be plastered across police stations and news outlets as a missing person. 28-year-old Emma Sullivan had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only faint bloodstains and a devastated father. "Tell me everything again, Mr. Sullivan," James said, sliding a cup of lukewarm coffee across the table. Robert Sullivan's tired eyes reflected 14 sleepless hours since he'd found his daughter's empty apartment. "I called her all weekend. She wasn't answering." "It wasn't like her, Detective. Emma always returns my calls within a few hours. So you want to check on her?" James prompted, watching the older man's hands tremble slightly. "Yesterday morning. Used my spare key. The place was quiet. Too quiet." Robert paused, collecting himself. "At first, I thought she was at work. Her car wasn't in the driveway. But then I went into her bedroom." James nodded, already knowing what came next. The bloodstains, not pools, but distinct smears on the bedroom floor and bedsheets. Most disturbing was the pair of underwear hanging on the back of the bathroom door, also stained with what appeared to be dried blood. "Mr. Sullivan, do you know if your daughter was seeing anyone? A boyfriend, perhaps?" "Yes, Marcus Whitby. They've been together about 8 months. He works at the bank downtown." James made a note. "We'll speak with him. Anyone else who might have had access to her apartment?" "No one else had a key, as far as I know. Just me and Emma." Robert hesitated. "Detective, she works at Hanson Luxury Motors. Good job, good people. She was saving for a house. Everything was going well for her. People don't just disappear, Mr. Sullivan. We'll find her." As Robert Sullivan left the precinct, Detective Donovan turned to his partner, Detective Avachan. "What's your read?" he asked. Ava flipped through her notes. "Forensics found blood in the pattern consistent with menstruation on the underwear, but there's something off about the placement. The bloodstains on the floor and sheets don't match that explanation. Missing woman, blood evidence, but no signs of forced entry," James mused. "First stop, the boyfriend." Marcus Whitby sat nervously in the interrogation room, his designer tie loosened around his neck. At 32, he had the polished appearance of someone who worked with money and the anxious demeanor of someone who suddenly found himself the suspect. "When did you last see Emma?" James asked, keeping his tone conversational. "Friday night. We had dinner at Castellano's. I dropped her off at her place around 11. Marcus ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "We were supposed to meet Sunday for brunch, but she didn't show. I texted, called, nothing. How would you describe your relationship?" Marcus hesitated. "Good. Normal. I mean, we argue sometimes, like every couple." Detective Chen leaned forward. "What do you argue about?" "Just regular stuff. Work schedules. Where to eat. The future." He looked down at his hands. "I've been pushing for us to move in together. Emma wasn't ready." "Mr. Whitby," James said, "several of Emma's coworkers mentioned witnessing some heated arguments between you two recently." Marcus's face flushed. Look, I didn't do anything to her. Yes, we had a disagreement last week. It was about her working late with some client. A guy who kept coming back to test drive cars, but never bought anything. Were you jealous? Ava asked. Concerned, Marcus corrected, too quickly. Emma's beautiful. Men notice her. Where were you Saturday night and Sunday morning? James asked. Home. Alone. I was preparing a presentation for work. James nodded, making another note. We'll need to verify that. And we'll need access to your car and apartment. Whatever you need, Marcus said. Just find her. As they left the interrogation room, Ava shook her head. He's hiding something. Everyone's hiding something, James replied. The question is whether it's related to Emma's disappearance. In the lab, forensic technician Dr. Lydia Parks was examining the blood-stained underwear when James entered. Please tell me you've got something, he said. Lydia pointed to the stain pattern under the microscope. This is interesting. Initially, it looked like menstrual blood, which is what the father thought. But look at the flow pattern. James leaned in to look through the microscope. See how the blood flowed sideways? If she'd been standing or sitting, menstrual blood would flow downward, centered. This pattern suggests she was lying on her side when the blood was deposited. And there's something else. She moved to another workstation where the bed sheets were spread out. The blood on these sheets contains high levels of iron, consistent with blood that originated higher in the body, potentially from a head wound. James felt the familiar tension of a case turning darker. You're saying we're looking at an injury, not a natural bodily function. Most likely. And based on the pattern, whatever happened, she wasn't standing up at the time. James stared at the evidence, the pieces beginning to form an unsettling picture. Someone wanted us to think she was menstruating. They left the underwear where it would be found, hoping we'd dismiss the blood evidence. But they couldn't hide the truth of the blood flow, Lydia concluded. 3 weeks passed with no sign of Emma Sullivan. Her credit cards remained unused, her social media accounts dormant. James had interviewed everyone in Emma's life, coworkers, friends, former boyfriends, but no clear suspects emerged beyond Marcus, whose alibi had checked out through electronic records, though not through any witnesses. Then, 7 months into the investigation, the call came. Detective Donovan? This is Security Officer Reynolds from Pine Grove Estates. We have a situation with an abandoned vehicle. The car, a silver Audi A4, had been parked behind a vacant house in an upscale neighborhood for months. The Homeowners Association had finally decided to investigate. License plate doesn't match our records, Officer Reynolds explained, but the VIN number is intact. It was Emma's car. The plates had been switched, a crude but effective way to hide the vehicle in plain sight. Forensics descended on the car, combing through it for any trace of what might have happened to its owner. Hair, fingerprints, the works, James instructed the team. Whoever drove this car here might have made a mistake. Robert Sullivan confirmed it was his daughter's vehicle, his face crumpling when he saw it. She loved this car. She would never abandon it. The car yielded little, some of Emma's fingerprints, as expected, and an unidentified set that didn't match any in their database. The trunk liner had been replaced, too clean, too new. Something had been transported there that someone didn't want to be discovered. They replaced the entire trunk liner, Ava observed. That's methodical. But not perfect, James replied. The replacement isn't factory standard. Our guy knows enough to be dangerous, but made mistakes. The question is, where did he take her? Marcus Whitby returned for another round of questioning, this time with a lawyer beside him. My client has cooperated fully, the attorney stated. Yet he continues to be treated as a suspect without evidence. James placed photographs of Emma's car on the table. The vehicle was found with altered plates in Pine Grove Estates. Do you know that area, Mr. Withy? I've shown houses there. It's an upscale development. Marcus looked at the photos with genuine surprise. I had nothing to do with this. Your profession is banking, yet you show houses? Ava questioned. I do some real estate on the side. Investment properties, mostly. James leaned forward. So you would be familiar with vacant properties in the area, like the one where Emma's car was found. Marcus's lawyer intervened. Detective, my client has already provided his whereabouts for the weekend Ms. Sullivan disappeared, which you verified. Unless you have new evidence connecting him directly to this discovery, we're done here. After they left, Ava threw her pen across the desk. He knows something. Maybe James agreed, but proving it is another matter. Let's dig deeper into Pine Grove Estates. Someone in that neighborhood might have seen something. The seasons changed. Fall turned to winter, winter to spring. Emma Sullivan's case remained open but grew colder with each passing day. Leads dried up. The initial media frenzy died down. Even Robert Sullivan's weekly visits to the precinct became less frequent, though the pain in his eyes never diminished. James kept the case file on his desk, reviewing it often. Something was missing, a connection, a witness, a piece of evidence that would break everything open. 14 months after Emma's disappearance, his phone rang early on a Saturday morning. Detective Donovan. Sir, this is Officer Mercer. You need to come to Carson Falls Recreational Area. Some hikers found something you should see. The hiking trail near Carson Falls was popular with tourists and locals alike, known for its magnificent waterfall and dense surrounding forest. When James arrived, a section had been cordoned off where the earth had been disturbed. Teenagers spotted a wild pheasant scratching at the ground, Officer Mercer explained, leading him to the site. When they came closer, they saw the bird was pulling at something. They thought it was roots until they saw a human skull. James felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. The pheasant was feeding on insects in the disturbed soil? Yes, sir. Maggots, from what they described. Nature's little cleanup crew working overtime. The excavation was already underway, forensic anthropologists carefully removing dirt to reveal the remains beneath. As they worked, items emerged: a gold ring, decomposed fabric, and human bones wrapped partially in what had once been a cloth binding. By afternoon, they had recovered an almost complete skeleton. The skull showed signs of blunt force trauma. Long strands of brown hair still clung to it, preserved by the soil conditions. Female, mid to late 20s, the anthropologist told James. Dead approximately 12 to 18 months based on decomposition rates in the soil type. James studied the knotted fabric that had been wrapped around the skull. What's this binding? It looks deliberate. Some kind of restraint, the anthropologist suggested. The knot pattern is distinctive, not your standard tie-up job. Later that day, Robert Sullivan identified the ring found with the remains as belonging to his daughter. It was her mother's, he said, voice breaking. She never took it off. DNA testing would later confirm what they already knew. They had found Emma Sullivan. The knot pattern is what interests me, James told Ava back at the precinct, examining photographs of the bindings. It's a specific technique, not common knowledge. I've asked around, Ava replied. It's similar to what rock climbers and outdoor enthusiasts use, a modified figure-eight follow-through. So we're looking for someone with outdoor experience, possibly climbing or hiking, or someone who learned these knots elsewhere. Boy Scouts, military, sailing. James tapped his pen against the desk. Let's cross-reference outdoor clubs near Emma's neighborhood with our witness lists. Someone might have seen something they didn't realize was important. The search yielded an unexpected connection. A local climbing group often met at a garage workshop next door to Emma's apartment complex. The owner, Charlie Vasquez, had converted part of his auto repair shop into a climbing wall for enthusiasts. We never interviewed him, Ava realized, checking their records. The shop wasn't open the day we canvassed the neighborhood. Charlie's Auto Repair was a well-maintained establishment with 3 service bays and the promised climbing wall visible through a side entrance. Charlie himself was wiping his hands on a rag when the detectives arrived, coming out from under a lifted car. "Charlie Vasquez?" James asked, showing his badge. "That's me. What can I do for you, detectives?" Charlie was in his mid-30s, muscular with calloused hands, the build of someone who worked with his hands and stayed active. "We're investigating the disappearance of Emma Sullivan. She lived in the apartment complex next door." Charlie nodded solemnly. "The pretty girl with the Audi. Terrible thing. Everyone around here was shocked when she went missing." "Did you know her?" Ava asked. "Not really. She'd wave sometimes when passing by. Brought her car in once for an oil change." He gestured toward the service bay. "I noticed when she stopped coming around, of course. Hard not to notice someone like her." "I see you have a climbing wall," James observed. "You into outdoor activities?" Charlie's expression brightened. "Yeah, big time. Climbing, hiking, camping, you name it. Got a little community here. We head out to Carson Falls sometimes on weekends." James and Ava exchanged glances at the mention of Carson Falls. "Anyone else in your group know Emma?" James asked. Charlie thought for a moment. "Not that I'm aware of." "Why?" "We found human remains at Carson Falls," Ava said bluntly, watching Charlie's reaction. "We believe they belong to Emma Sullivan." Charlie's face registered shock. "Jesus, that's awful." He leaned against a workbench. "Right there at the falls?" "We were just there a couple months ago." "The body was well hidden," James said. "Mr. Vasquez, where were you the weekend Emma disappeared?" "Me? I was here working. Saturday is my busiest day." "Can anyone verify that?" "Customers, sure. I'd have to check the service records from back then." James nodded. "We'd appreciate that. Also, a list of your climbing group members who might frequent Carson Falls." As they were leaving, Ava paused. "One more thing, Mr. Vasquez. Do you ever do construction work on the side?" Charlie looked puzzled by the question. "Sometimes. Handyman stuff." "Why?" "Just covering all bases," she replied. "Thanks for your time." In the car, James looked at her. Construction work wasn't in his file. Good catch. The knots, Detective Donovan. Construction workers, especially those who work at heights, often know specialized knots. Combined with his climbing experience and his familiarity with Carson Falls, James added, "Let's run a background check and talk to his climbing buddies." The background check on Charlie Vasquez revealed a life that looked ordinary on the surface. Small business owner, no criminal record beyond a DUI 12 years earlier, active in local outdoor clubs, divorced with no children. Digging deeper, they found something interesting. Charlie had worked briefly for a renovation company that had done work on Emma's apartment building the year before she disappeared. He could have had access to her apartment during renovations, Ava pointed out. Maybe that's how he first noticed her. Meanwhile, interviews with the climbing group yielded an unexpected revelation from a college student named Tyler. Charlie? Yeah, he's a good guy. Knows his stuff about climbing, Tyler told them. He did mention Emma once, now that I think about it. What did he say? James prompted. It was weird, actually. We were talking about the missing woman case. You know, everyone was talking about it back then. Charlie said she seemed nice, that he'd done some ceiling work in her apartment a few months before. Said she was total girlfriend material and joked about whisking her away someday. Those were his exact words. Whisking her away? Yeah, I thought it was just talk, you know? Guys say stuff. James kept his expression neutral. Did Charlie ever mention having any interaction with Emma beyond the repair work? Not really. Oh, but he was acting strange around the time she went missing. Usually, he's at the shop all hours, but that weekend, he didn't show up for our Sunday climb. Said he was busy with an emergency job. Armed with this new information, James obtained a search warrant for Charlie's home and business. The auto shop yielded nothing suspicious, but in Charlie's apartment, tucked in a box in his closet, they found what they were looking for. A small notebook with detailed information about Emma, her work schedule, the times she typically left her apartment. Notes about her boyfriend. Most damning was an entry from the weekend she disappeared. Done. Waterfall site secure. Car hidden at the Mitchell property. Problem solved. Within hours, Charlie Vasquez was brought in for questioning. His confident demeanor had vanished, replaced by nervous agitation. I want a lawyer, he said immediately. That's your right, James acknowledged, sliding the evidence bag containing the notebook across the table. But we already have enough to charge you. The Mitchell property, that's the vacant house in Pine Grove Estates where Emma's car was found. You did renovation work there last year. Charlie stared at the notebook, saying nothing. We've also matched your DNA to samples found in Emma's car. The new trunk liner wasn't as effective as you hoped. This was a bluff. The tests weren't back yet, but James watched Charlie's reaction carefully. Charlie's shoulders slumped slightly. Here's what I think happened, James continued. You became obsessed with Emma during the ceiling repairs in her apartment. You watched her, learned her routines. That night, you waited until she was alone, broke in, and attacked her. When things went wrong, you killed her, then used her own car to transport her body to Carson Falls, a place you knew well. Charlie remained silent, but his breathing had quickened. The knots, Charlie, the ones you used to bind her. Those are specialized climbing knots. That was your mistake. With Charlie in custody and refusing to talk, the prosecution built their case on circumstantial evidence. Then, the forensic results provided the final pieces. Charlie's DNA was indeed found on the replacement trunk liner, and soil samples from his hiking boots matched the distinct mineral composition of the burial site at Carson Falls. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Charlie Vasquez finally confessed. His lawyer negotiated a plea deal in exchange for the full story. According to Charlie, he had been drinking heavily the night of Emma's disappearance. At around 2 a.m., fueled by liquid courage and longtime obsession, he had scaled the wall to her second-floor apartment, gaining entry through a window he had deliberately left unlocked during his previous repair work. He admitted entering her bedroom while she slept, initially claiming he only wanted to talk to her. When Emma woke and started screaming, he panicked, covering her mouth with one hand and binding her wrists with fabric torn from a shirt. He told her he had feelings for her, that they belonged together. When Emma tried to escape, Charlie slammed her head against the floor to subdue her. The impact killed her instantly. Realizing what he'd done, Charlie methodically cleaned the apartment, wrapped Emma's body, and loaded it into the trunk of her car. He drove to Carson Falls, where he buried her in a remote spot. Then he drove her car to the vacant house in Pine Grove Estates, switching the plates with ones he had stolen months earlier, anticipating the possibility of one day needing them. Charlie was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder and sexual assault. Emma Sullivan was finally laid to rest in a proper ceremony, her father finding some measure of closure in knowing what had happened to his daughter. 1 year after closing the case, Detective James Donovan stood at Emma Sullivan's grave, placing a small stone atop her headstone, a tradition he had for the victims whose cases he solved. "We got him, Emma," he said quietly. "A wild pheasant scratching in the dirt led us to you. Nature has its own justice sometimes." As he walked back to his car, his phone rang with news of another missing woman. James took a deep breath and answered the call, knowing that somewhere, another family was beginning the same nightmare that Robert Sullivan had endured. The wheels of justice would turn again. The evidence would tell its story, and James would listen, piecing together the truth one clue at a time. Because the dead cannot speak for themselves, but sometimes they find other ways to be heard. The glass walls separating prisoners from visitors did nothing to diminish the intensity of Robert Sullivan's gaze as he sat across from Charlie Vasquez. For months, he had requested this meeting, needing to face the man who had taken his daughter. "Why?" Robert asked simply, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. Charlie, thinner now after a year in prison, looked down at his hands. "I don't have an answer that will make sense to you, Mr. Sullivan. I was obsessed. I convinced myself she felt something for me too. She didn't even know you existed beyond fixing her ceiling," Robert said. "I know that now." Charlie paused. "I dream about her sometimes, about what I did. I can't escape it." "Good," Robert replied. "Neither can I." As he left the prison, Robert felt no closure, no relief, just the hollow acknowledgement that the man responsible for his daughter's death would spend the rest of his life behind bars. It wasn't justice, nothing could be, but it was something. He drove to Carson Falls one last time, standing at the spot where Emma had been found. A wild pheasant strutted nearby, unbothered by his presence. Robert watched the bird scratch at the earth, a silent witness to secrets buried beneath. "Thank you," he whispered to the bird, to the forest, to whatever force had finally brought his daughter home. The pheasant paused, cocked its head as if listening, then continued its endless search through the dirt, unaware of its role in uncovering the truth that humans had tried so desperately to hide. Nature, in the end, kept no secrets, and neither could Charlie Vasquez. The courtroom was packed for Charlie Vasquez's sentencing hearing. Detective Donovan sat behind the prosecution table, watching as the judge delivered the maximum sentence allowed by law. The premeditated nature of this crime, the judge stated, as evidenced by the defendant's stalking behavior, the deliberate unlocking of the victim's window during previous work at her residence, and the methodical disposal of evidence, leaves this court no choice but to impose the harshest penalty available. James glanced at Ava, who had worked tirelessly alongside him to build the case. She gave a small nod of satisfaction. As Charlie was led away in handcuffs, James thought about the seemingly insignificant decisions that had led to his capture: a wild pheasant's search for food, a distinctive knot pattern, a careless comment to a climbing buddy. In his 15 years as a detective, he had learned that killers always make mistakes. Sometimes, those mistakes take months or years to surface. But the truth finds its way into the light, often through the most unexpected channels. The case file on Emma Sullivan would soon be archived, marked closed. But James knew that her story and the lessons it contained about observation, patience, and the unexpected ways evidence presents itself would stay with him throughout his career. In the detective's world, it was the details that mattered. A bloodstain flowing in the wrong direction, a knot tied by experienced hands, a bird scratching at disturbed earth, and sometimes justice hinged on paying attention to those details when no one else would. As the courtroom emptied, James gathered his notes and prepared for his next case, carrying with him the knowledge that even the most carefully buried secrets cannot remain hidden forever. Not when someone is determined to find them. Not when the silent witnesses, be they blood patterns, specialized knots, or even wild pheasants, are finally given the chance to speak. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. It truly means a lot. If this story gave you chills or made you think, hit that like button to help more people discover it. Let me know in the comments, what part of this case hit you the hardest? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you know someone who's into strange, haunting stories like this, don't forget to share it with them. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next mystery we unravel. Every like, comment, and share helps support this channel and keeps these stories alive. See you in the next one.